Hello to you, Philip. Tell us a bit more about what's at stake here.
Well, I think it was summed up well this morning on a newswire from AFP, which called it the worst political headache for the European Union to talk about enlargement, especially right now. How to welcome in new, mostly poorer members to an institution that is already based on rules that were drawn up decades ago when there were just fewer countries, and where it's going to be very difficult to overhaul the whole European Union to welcome in these new countries. So these are the ones that want to join: Turkey, North Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, Albania, Moldova, Ukraine, Bosnia and Herzegovina. They're the countries that are in yellow on the map. So the one which stands out, of course, is Ukraine, because of the war imposed by Russia. And Ukraine wants fast-track entry into the European Union. And although most countries, most of the 27 members of the European Union, are in agreement about that, what they don't agree with is the idea that the whole EU is going to have to be overhauled. The common agricultural policy, for example, there will have to be changes to rules on collective decision-making, and all of that will have to be in place before Ukraine can become a member. So that's why some are saying, well, yes, we would like Ukraine to be a member, but at the same time, we're a little bit reticent about it because it means that there are going to be many changes that are going to have to take place before Ukraine can come in, and we're not quite ready to introduce those changes or take on those changes right now. So that's a dilemma. And that is why Volodymyr Zelensky is becoming increasingly worried about what is going to happen in the future. He has issued a statement saying that he welcomes the idea of coming to this European Political Community Summit in Grenada, and that what he really wants is for Ukraine to join the EU as quickly as possible. But there's another issue also which is concerning the EU leaders, and that is the fact that they're worried about what's going on in the United States and whether the funding from the United States is going to carry on for Ukraine, especially if there is a change of political standing in the White House next year, if Donald Trump is re-elected. The shutdown has also rung the alarm bells about future funding for Ukraine, and the EU says we cannot take on the funding the US is providing if that is to dry up and keep supporting the war in Ukraine. So lots of issues that are drawing red lines at this summer over expansion of the EU.
And is this putting the reputation of some EU leaders on the line?
Well, that is also a threat, and there are three big ones. One of them is the French President Emmanuel Macron. There's also the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, both of them, and you can see in this picture. And there's also Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the EU Commission. They are pushing for this EU enlargement. The big problem that they have is they are seeing on the one side the rise of populist far-right movements in some countries, also from the far left, which are populist too. We've just seen that happening in Slovakia, but also we've seen the rise of populist movements in Italy, in Sweden, not as well as Hungary and other countries like Poland, for example. And there is a threat of a split within the EU over those who are in favour of maintaining the way the EU is run at the moment and those who want it completely overhauled in the interests of their own country, or this exacerbated by the migrant crisis. So there are lots of different issues that are on the table right now. And I think the best way of putting it is there is a decision that has to be made between Euro idealism on the one side, that's the ideal situation for the EU, and hard-nosed pragmatism on the other, so that the EU can soothe the jitters of some leaders who are fearing the rise of populism in their country at the next election.
And it's not the only issues being discussed. There's also Nagorno-Karabakh and tensions between Serbia and Kosovo as well.
That is true, and that hasn't got off to a very good start either, because the Azerbaijan president Ilham Aliyev was due to come to this summit. He's not come because he says that he was annoyed about pro-Armenian statements by French officials, so no meeting between him and Nikol Pashinyan, which was due to take place. That is disappointing, but there is hope that a new meeting will take place organised by the EU before the end of October between those two presidents. The Turkish president Recep Tayyip Erdogan is also not present. That is also disappointing because of his role in not only mediating participating in the war in Ukraine, but also in the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh as well. Turkey is the longest-standing country that is asking for EU membership. The Turkish president recently saying that he didn't hold out any hope of any membership anytime soon, and that he didn't expect anything from the EU. And of course, there's the Serbia and Kosovo situation and threats of a rise in clashes between those two nations, which is something also that the EU is having to deal with. So lots of other issues as well as expansion at this summit, which has to be said, bringing together 44 heads of state, not just the 27 members of the European Union.
All right, Philip, thank you very much. Philip Turle, France 24's foreign editor.